Molly here. If you like what we're doing and you want us to keep doing more of it, please hit that subscribe button so that we can get monetized and we can keep bringing you this kind of content and more. Since we published our review of the trailer for the upcoming season of Star Trek Picard, we have read a lot of comments, had some good discussions, watched some videos of some interviews with people involved with the show. Now we're going to talk about what our expectations are for the upcoming season.
For me, I actually think from a narrative point of view, the stories are going to be better in season 3. I'm not saying that equates to good. That is yet to be seen. But when the low point is eating car batteries from season 2, you can't go anywhere but up, at least as far as narratively speaking. I know Molly has a slightly different take on this, where I'm saying you couldn't get any worse. Molly, how could it be worse?
Oh, I think it could be much worse. You bring in all of these characters that everyone remembers from the next generation. It's a danger zone at that point, because if you aren't faithful to what those characters were, you could really destroy them. I'm very concerned that with the way the writing has been on that show, and don't get me wrong, yes, I know Terry Matalas is in charge this season. However, he was a co-showrunner last season, and he wrote the first 2 episodes of season 2. And I know that Robert Meyer Burnett has been out there saying, I've watched this through 3 times now this next season, and that this is so much better. Terry Matalas has these creds that he used to be an assistant to Brandon Braga. But the problem is that, yeah, that's probably all true. However, I just think about things like, well, Kathleen Kennedy was an assistant to George Lucas for how many years? She worked with Steven Spielberg, and look what she has done being in charge of Star Wars. I don't feel that those are good arguments. Just because someone was somebody's assistant or worked on any kind of post-production or anything like that, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be good at the upcoming job when they're put in charge. Which makes me think of something else I won't mention here, but just because someone has the experience doesn't mean that they were good at what they did, nor does it mean that they have what it takes to take over the project now.
Ever since that trailer video, the comments have gotten us talking and thinking about lots of expectations for this season. And you told me that there was like one line in that trailer that got you worried about what they were going to do with the characters.
Yeah.
Is anybody you know still the person you knew?
That gave me pause. And it seemed to me like that was telegraphing exactly what they were going to do here, that these characters aren't going to be the same characters that we remember.
One of the main changes that I think needs to be addressed in this season, ignoring it is insufficient. Picard at the end of season 1 was turned into an android. That's a big deal. He died in season 1, and he was put into this robot body. And that's what we've seen in season 2. Now, you had an idea on how at the beginning of season 3, a scenario they could set up to fix this, because they have to address this. They can't just let it go. They have to address this, or we will not accept this character as Jean-Luc Picard, because he's a robot. So what was your idea about this?
Well, I found a very simple way, probably not the most elegant way, but the easiest, quickest way to write your way out of this. That at the beginning of the first episode, maybe Picard is, I don't know, doing something, whether he's cutting open an envelope or, doing something with a knife. I don't know. He accidentally cuts himself and he is bleeding and he's looking at it and he's like, well, that's not supposed to happen to an android. And then he goes and sees a doctor. The doctor does some tests and, oh, well, you're fully human. Picard just says, one last gift from Q. And he's human again and we just move on.
Yeah, that would be a way to pretend in narrative that the first 2 seasons didn't exist. Now, the second issue, the lighting in that trailer was too dark. We couldn't see what was going on. I know when Molly was putting together some of the video footage for our last trailer review, you made a joke about the fight scene. What was that joke?
Oh, in that fight scene, I'm fairly certain it was Raffi and Worf who were fighting each other, but it was so dark. If it turns out it was somebody else, it wouldn't surprise me any, because you really can't tell for certain who that is in that shot. I mean, in reality, it's probably 2 stunt people who were supposed to be Raffi and Worf, but it's so dimly lit, you really can't tell.
And in the trailer review, I mentioned about at the very beginning, there was this commander talking about Picard and Riker's history of crashing ships and just doing all these really disappointing, destructive things.
The dinner scene.
I was looking at the video footage and I said I saw 3 pips on his neck. I think there's 4 there. I think that's a captain. We made the joke that that's the actor himself kind of looks like the same guy that was in that short Trek with the tribbles. But I think that's a captain. But I couldn't see his pip because it was so dark. And again, that goes right back to no matter how anybody's defending what's actually going to be in this series, I think it's a fair criticism to say you can call it cinematic if you want, because I've heard that being thrown around. If cinematic means so dark you can barely see what's going on, I'm not okay with that. In that trailer, I could not see what was going on. And another thing, and we touched on this a little bit in the review trailer, is a review of the trailer, is a teaser trailer's purpose is to just stick a bunch of stuff out there so that you can get a feeling for the kind of stuff that's going to be in there. And they released a teaser trailer like 3 months ago. The thing that came out last week, that was supposed to be an actual trailer. And I have no idea what the story is. Yes, I know you don't want to give the whole story away in a trailer, but it just felt like a longer teaser trailer. If there's so much great stuff in there, why didn't they put some of that in there? It was a nonsensical, here's a bunch of scenes with shaky cam that's so dark you can't see anything. If this series is going to be so much of a departure from the first 2, wouldn't you want to sell that in the trailer? That's what I don't understand. Why didn't they sell that in the trailer? Give me an idea of what actually is going to be in this. And the last thing that I'm having an issue with is Robert Meyer Burnett claimed that this season is like one big long movie. To me, that gives me the worst fears that this is another Next Generation film instead of a TV series based around TNG. I'm not really happy hearing that this is one big 8 or 10 episode movie. I would like an 8 or 10 episode TV series. Why can't I have that? Different people like Star Trek for different reasons. So if this resonated with Robert Meyer Burnett and he said he saw it 3 times, who am I to tell him that he's wrong as far as what he likes? That's like saying he likes vanilla ice cream. How dare you like that? However, does that mean what he likes is what I like? We're going to have to wait and see. I do have some expectations coming into this. I think it's going to be narratively better. I don't think people are going to be eating car batteries. So that's a plus. I think the characters are going to kind of, at the very minimum, feel like themselves. I think that's a plus. But one thing we have to remember, and I mean, I'm warning everybody out there listening to this, in both the previous Picard seasons, the first 2 episodes were not bad. So do not go into the first episode, and if it's not puke, say, man, this is a great series. Because go back and watch season 2. Go back and watch season 1. The first 2 episodes weren't bad there. It's like when you get to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th episode is where things go off the rails. That's traditionally what happens. Discovery was a little bit different because it was a 2-parter pilot, I guess we'll say. Once they had that mutiny in I think it was the 2nd episode, it was done. Like, you knew right away that series was trash in the 2nd episode. But Picard didn't do that. Strange New Worlds, I don't know. It depends on your interpretation. Mollie and I didn't like the pilot. But Strange New Worlds didn't go down the path of they're stealing aliens, they're stealing all these properties until like the 3rd or 4th episode. So do not watch the first episode and say, I now have proof this is fixed. You need to give it to like the 3rd or 4th episode because they have a history at CBS of putting their best foot forward at the very beginning, and then after that 3rd or 4th episode going down the crap train. I don't know if this is going to do it, but I know I am not going to start giving reviews in a positive manner until after the 3rd or 4th episode of this season, because I'm not going to trick people. I'm not going to say this is good, people into watching it only to be disappointed.
Well, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to watch each episode, and I'm going to give an honest evaluation of it. But yeah, as far as whether or not someone should watch the season or even a single episode of it, I'm not going to make that assessment till I've watched the whole season, because they might even do something so horrible in the final episode that it negates everything that came before it. That's just my take on that.
My prediction of what this season's going to be, I think narratively speaking, it's going to be much, much better than eating car batteries. However, in the grand scheme of things, I have a feeling it's going to fit in as like an average Next Generation film. That's my feelings for this. And I don't know, for a lot of people who have swept the bottom of the barrel with this Picard eating car battery stuff, maybe that's good enough for them. Maybe having a mediocre Next Generation film is sufficient. I don't know. I mean, one of the other things that I've thought about is we remember Enterprise, the television series with Scott Bakula. We remember that those first 2 seasons with the Xindi storyline was not being accepted very well by the public, the Star Trek public, I should say. But then Manny Koto came in, and he was starting to turn that franchise around, and they canceled it, and it stayed canceled till J.J. Abrams came around. So like I said earlier in the last video about how the Next Generation films are what caused Star Trek to get canceled, at least on the big screen. Enterprise is what caused Star Trek to get canceled on the small screen. And even though Manny Koto at the end was, I think most people agree, that latter part of Enterprise was actually pretty decent. It was getting better. Maybe not perfect, but better. Even if we say Terry Matalas is the Manny Koto, is that enough to save Star Trek?
Well, in the case of Enterprise, it was too little too late. There was no turning the ship around at that point. And as we all know, this is the final season of Picard. Even if this final season of Picard is, by some miracle, actually good, that doesn't really have any kind of implications for Star Trek Discovery or even Strange New Worlds at this point.
And that goes back to what we were saying earlier. The only purpose I can see of this season, because it's a dead-end season, like it's going to end, they guaranteed this is the last season of Picard. Is this an interview for Terry Matalas taking over for Alex Kurtzman? That's what this feels like to me. This is a Manny Koto situation, except Manny Koto was never allowed to say, hey, put me in charge for a brand new series and let me see what I can bring you. He had to take over some crap that was already going. So even if Terry gets put in charge here, is there time to do that? I don't know. I don't know Terry. So other than him mouthing off on Twitter, which he should just stay off of Twitter and just not interact with these people when they're in a production. But
Twitter's a sewer. Yeah. Everybody should stay off of Twitter.
But if I'm going to put him in a positive light here, let's assume he is the Manny Koto of Picard. Well, now what? It's a dead-end season. Does he get in charge of a new series? And if so, does that mean anything useful? Is it still Secret Hideout that's running the productions? I have lots of questions on, even if we get, as Robert Meyer Burnett has said, the best Star Trek in 15 years, it's a dead-end season. Then what? I don't know. I have lots of questions here. I'm not trying to dump on people I don't know. As I've said in the other video, I like Robert Meyer Burnett's YouTube personality. I don't know him personally, but he seems like he's a true Star Trek person with a lot of knowledge. And I'm going to be honest that if I have any want to give this season a chance, it's based on Robert Meyer Burnett. And that's it. That trailer did nothing to give me any faith at all. It's going to be dark and shooty. But Robert says to give it a chance. I'll admit it. I'm going to try to give this a chance based on specifically Robert Meyer Burnett. However, if he turns out to be wrong, I don't know if I'm going to be able to look at him the same way. I really, really hope that he's right. Yeah, it'll turn out to be a dead-end season that goes nowhere, but if it's just a nice little 10-episode break from this car battery eating crap, okay, I mean, then at least he has not ruined his reputation, and Robert said this, and it turned out to be the case. We won't know till we see it.
Yeah, and even if the season is good, even if there is nothing after that, we will always have this one season. So if it is good, live in the now and enjoy it while you can, because this is it. This is the final season of Picard. There is no more coming after this. I mean, sometimes that's all you get is just one glorious season or even one glorious episode. You just got to take what you can when you get it.
Let's assume it's true, and this is really that one season we're going to enjoy. This is the Manny Koto situation all over again.
Yeah.
Because this is a dead-end season. So it's not like Terry's going to get another season of Picard. Picard's done. They've stated that. This is the last season. The advertising literature has the last season of Picard on there. So how is this different than Manny Koto? I don't understand. How is this different?
Maybe if this does well, maybe they'll take one of those younger characters, like maybe 7 of 9, or God forbid, even Raffi, if they've actually improved her character and spin off another series.
But that new series cannot keep looking at the past. It's kind of like Next Generation. They had, even though they didn't name him, they had DeForest Kelley playing Bones in the Next Generation. I don't think they ever named him, but I think we all knew that was Bones. And that was the kind of bridge. And then, of course, through the series, you had Leonard Nimoy appearing, you had James Doohan appearing. So you had sprinkles of older TOS people to try to give TNG legitimacy, as well as showing it's the same narrative, the same continuity. If they're going to do that with the next series, then they have to realize that if they do have a Raffi or a Seven that is going to be those anchors for the new series to kind of continue the continuity, that they have to have new people, like younger people. But the thing is, this continuity they're in right now, they have crapped the bed so much. I don't know why you'd want to build on this.
I wouldn't.
Because the only thing I see as far as a purpose of this season is to give the Next Generation crew a send-off like Star Trek 6 was for TOS. That's all I can see this season being. And then after that, we're at the same point we were before. Now what with Star Trek? Because if Terry does take over the Star Trek brand at CBS, he's going to have to, clean a house. Discovery has to end. You cannot fix Discovery.
Oh, God, no.
Strange New World has to end, although not as bad as Discovery in some places. It's bad. A prequel. Yeah, it's a bad prequel that's not going anywhere. So he's going to have to clean house if he is put in charge, and this is the way forward. And then he's going to have to create a new series from scratch. Again, I don't think how can you bring Raffi and Seven in from that previous incarnation of what Picard is now? If you're going to clean the slate, you've got to clean the slate. I would argue the best way to do this, because there's one franchise that hasn't been tainted yet by this secret hideout crap, and that's Deep Space Nine. So I would argue if Terry is put in charge after this Picard season, you wipe out all this Prime Kelvin crap, you bring in a couple of Deep Space Nine older characters to start the original continuity forward again, and then you build a new next generation of Star Trek with some of the Deep Space Nine non-tainted characters. And move forward. That's my take. And is Terry the right person? I don't know. But maybe this is his interview. This season is his interview to say, should I be in charge of Star Trek's next endeavor? But all this Prime and Kelvin crap, you have got to just cross off. It's done. That includes, I hate to say it, Lower Decks, cross it off, gone. Prodigy, cross it off, gone. You got to start forward from there. So I know this sounds negative, but what I'm saying is if Terry, despite his horrible social media presence, actually is the real deal as far as being able to take Star Trek and put it on the screen correctly, then after this season, he needs to just remove everything before it in this secret hideout crap. My take, anyway.
I think that the franchise is going to go to sleep for a while after the current shows are completed.
It's Manny Koto 2.0 again.
Yeah, that's where I see this going. I might be surprised, and that would be great. If things actually turn around and we start getting some good stuff, I would be thrilled. But my prediction is that these are basically, they took some nighty-night snooze, and going to sleep for a while is inevitable at this point. That's just my take on it.
This is Enterprise all over again, where you've got potentially, again, I don't want to give Terry credit yet, but let's just go with what Robert's saying. We potentially have a big turnaround in the franchise, just like we did with Manny Koto with Enterprise. Manny Koto wasn't enough to save Star Trek, and it went to sleep till JJ woke it back up and ruined it. It's going to have to go to sleep again. I agree with you. I think this is Manny Koto all over again. It's going to go to sleep, and maybe 2025, probably 2030, that maybe they can try to start it up again.
Yeah.
So anyway, there were lots of comments that we were onesie-twosie answering about our expectations, and we thought maybe making a video would be the easier way to address some of these than to just try to keep answering people onesie-twosie.
As I said, I'm not expecting much. That one quote really bothered me, but we'll see if maybe context matters. Maybe it didn't mean what it looked like it meant, and we'll just have to wait and see.
What are your opinions on this upcoming season? Where do you think it's going? Do you think Terry has the ability to save this franchise? Why don't you comment below and let us know what you think?
Thanks for listening.
Take care.